Hi, everybody. Daryl Radijak here, and unfortunately, I'm not here live and in person. I pulled a boneheaded play and forgot I'm going to be in the Wasatch Mountains today, and there's no cell or Wi-Fi reception up there. So I made this recording. A huge thank you to Brian. My apologies to you and everyone and Kim. I wish I could be there live and in person, but I can't. So I'm going to give you about 20, 25 minutes of my best stuff. So sit back, relax, and hopefully you'll have lots of questions that we can answer afterwards. So I was asked today to talk to you on behalf of being safe in bear country. And the best way we know how to do that is to understand bear biology and bear behavior. So before we jump into things, I just want to assure everyone that I've been doing this for a long, long time. I am a wildlife biologist, got my degree in wildlife biologist. I've worked for state wildlife agencies, federal wildlife agencies, as well as nonprofits. And most of my work revolves around carnivores and other large mammals. So it's something that I'm passionate about. And so everything I'm going to be teaching to you today is going to be science-based. Now, to get things started, I think the first thing that we need to understand is where is bear country? Bears, black bears in particular, we're going to focus on black bears today. Black bears in particular pretty much wandered all over North America. Now, when the Europeans came in the 1600s, 1700s, we didn't really get along too well, and so we extirpated or we killed them out in many areas. Fortunately, black bears are repopulating their historic areas. So you find them in almost all the lower 48 states. They might be smaller populations depending on what state you're in, but bear country is beginning to be pretty much everywhere we have mature forests. But you all know where the bears live in your state. So this is what we're going to be talking about, how to be safe in bear country. Now, if you are in bear country and you have this guy walking around, don't you all think it'd be pretty good to know what to do should you, in case you bump into him? So that is what this presentation is going to be all about. And the way we begin to teach that is I've got to teach you a little bit about the biology and behavior of black bears. And so what we're going to do, we're going to start with some basic biology. And I want everyone to understand what a black bear is. And I know most of you do, but there's some misconceptions out there. So first and foremost, they're not as big as people think. Black bears are not this gargantuan animal. Typically, males range anywhere from 250 to 400 pounds, which is a big animal, don't get me wrong. But if you look at those mature females, you're looking at weights of 150 to maybe 200, maybe 250 pounds. And that's on average. There could be much bigger, there could be much smaller. But on average, many of those bears are the size of a large human being. So, because of that size relationship between black bears and humans, they tend to be a little bit more timid to us rather than, say, a brown bear or what we call a grizzly bear, because those do get much larger. So black bears are not as big as many people believe them to be. Now, if you look at kind of what makes them tick, I think what makes them tick is the fact that they're omnivores, which means they'll pretty much eat anything and everything. And I more or less call them eating machines. And the reason I say they're eating machines has a lot to do with the fact that they hibernate. Bears, as you know, during the wintertime go through this dormant period. Um, Depending on where you're at, could be as short as a few weeks, could be as long as 4 to 6 months, depending on what latitude you're on. And so when you do have this dormant period, it kind of starves the body. And so when bears wake up in the springtime, they're super hungry. They gotta gorge themselves to replenish the weight they lost during their hibernation. Summertime, there's usually plenty of food around, but then when fall rolls around, they go through this phase we call hyperphagia, where they're eating machines and they're trying to pack on the pounds for their next hibernation. So, how do bears go about finding all this food that they require? Well, they use their senses. And first or foremost, their sense of sight or their ability to see is very similar to what humans have. And so we all know what our eyesight is like. That's pretty much what bears see as well. Now, when it comes to hearing, bears do have a much more acute sense of hearing than humans. They can hear things that we cannot. But here's what really separates them. Their sense of smell. It's literally unequaled in the mammal world. I wrote an article called The Nose, the Glorious Nose, which goes into tremendous detail about their nose. But I'm going to try to explain it here as well, because their nose is what really sets bears apart and kind of what drives this idea of having bear human encounters. So, back to biology. Why do bears have such a great sense of smell? Well, it's easy. You look at the biology. You look at that skull on a bear. It looks like a normal skull until you turn it face on and you see this. You see this huge opening where this nose is, and you see all the cavernous material in there, all those nooks and crannies. That nasal cavity is absolutely jam-packed with olfactory receptors. That's just a scientific term for smell receptors. And so it's been roughly calculated that they have 2,000 times more smell receptors than us. So they can smell 2,000 times better than us, which is, that's a lot, but I don't really understand what that means. And so I developed this little analogy for you. It's called smell the beans. So you take a can of beans you buy from the grocery store, you come home, and as a human, we can open up that can of beans, pour it into a pot on the stove, and we begin cooking those beans. And alas, we can smell the beans. Now, you take your average house dog, whatever kind you have, and you're cooking those beans on the stove. That dog could probably smell the beans from outside the house. So, man, they got a really good sense of smell. Now take the best dog smell there is, the bloodhound. It's said that they have a sense of smell 300 times better than us. Believe it or not, folks, they can likely detect the beans on the can even before you open the can. They can smell remnants of bean juice from the factory or whatever. That's how strong their sense of smell is. You don't even open the can and they know what's in it. Now, how about that bear? That bear can likely smell the perfume that was on the person that put the beans in the can to begin with. And so that just goes to show their sense of smell is pretty much something we can't comprehend, but it's what drives these animals. And so it's so very, very important that we know that their sense of smell is so powerful. Now, why is it important? It's because this is why bear spray is so effective. If you want to be safe in bear country, you're going to use your brain first. But the other tool that is so effective is having bear spray. The reason being, I just described their sense of smell being so, so powerful that you take that can of bear spray, and this is the actual bear spray, not some knockoff product from a Walmart, but you spray that bear spray at a bear, and if it gets in that nasal cavity, you know how much we don't like that peppery smell. Imagine having 2,000 times more powerful a nose. It pretty much short circuits the bear's brain. And so this is why it's so effective, well over 90% effective at stopping a charging bear. And so what I hope to do now is to teach you when you should use it, because you don't have to use it unless it's an extreme situation. So let's talk a little bit about bear behavior. Now remember, they're driven by food. In the spring, they wake up, they're gorging themselves on the green shoots. Summer, there's plenty of berries, cherries, choke cherries, service berries, plenty of food out there for them. Then the fall, their diet switches to what we call hard mast or the nut crop. Very high calorie rich diet. They're starving for calories because they want to pack on pounds. And this is where it gets complicated because their thirst or their drive to find high caloric foods often leads them in conflict with humans, whether or not it's picnic areas, campgrounds, trash cans, anything that the bear could perceive as potential food source, they'll be drawn to it. And so oftentimes we have these bear human encounters because there's lots of bears out there, there's lots of people out there. The good thing is when we do encounter a bear, the bear, they're so smart, they often try to communicate with us and tell us what's going on in their mind. Now, I will say, I will preface, nothing's 100% certainty, but when you see these behaviors enough, you have a pretty good idea what the bear is going to do, but never totally think you know exactly what the bear is going to do. So let's talk about having a close encounter with a bear. And so, say you're out on a hike and you see a bear down in the valley eating wildflowers or whatever it's doing, and he goes about his business. That's not a bear encounter, that's a bear sighting. A bear encounter is when you are in such close proximity to that bear that that bear alters its behavior. You likely alter your behavior as well, but you're close enough to each other that you each know each other is there and you're going to react to the other person's presence. So let the fun begin and let's figure out what bears are doing when we have these close encounters. So the key here to being safe is you have to understand and you have to know how to read body posture and vocalizations. And the first thing you want to do is you want to determine what kind of situation are you in with this bear. And there's two primary situations you need to figure out. It's either this one or that one. It's pretty simple. There is a defensive situation and there's an offensive situation. And I'm mostly talking in the bear's perspective. So in a defensive situation, the bear's intention is to get you away, get you to increase the distance between you and them. They're they're upset, they're worried about something. They want you out of their space. Now, in the offensive situation, it's the complete opposite. The bear's intention is to decrease the distance. They want to get closer to you. More than likely, it's because they're attracted to some type of food source. And so, defensive situations, the Bears want you away. Offensive situations, the Bears want to get close to you. Real simple. Well, only one of two things. Now, let's talk in detail about a defensive situation. And there's multiple um, situations that can be defined as defensive. So, first and foremost, you're walking down the trail, not very good visibility. You walk around the corner and boom, there's a bear 10 feet away. This is a surprise encounter. The bear does not want you in his space. He's going to act defensively. You could stumble upon a food source of a bear, whether or not it's a carcass or a berry patch or a nut crop, or heaven forbid, a trash can or a dumpster. A lot of times people love hiking with their dogs, and their dogs can cause a bear to react defensively. The dogs are getting in their personal space. Once in a blue moon in the early summer, you could come across multiple adult bears. They're in the middle of their mating season. You don't want to get in between them at that time either. But probably the number one defensive situation you may encounter is a female with cubs. She's going to defend those cubs. You don't want to get anywhere near a bear, a mama bear with cubs. And so these are all defensive situations. And they're probably the most popular, most common encounters that you may have with a bear. Now, remember, in this defensive situation, the bear's intention is to increase the distance between you and them. And in order to do that, they're going to put on a show. They're going to get all blustery, loud, make lots of noises, trying to scare you away or let you know that they're upset with how close you are to them. And so there's a number of behaviors they're going to go through. And all these behaviors are pretty much telling you that they're upset with your presence. And so they may pop their jaws. They'll smack their lips together real fast, going. Another thing they may do is they're going to huff. These are the exaggerated breaths. They'll go, and so that too is telling you they're upset or nervous. They may do some vocalizations where they moan, kind of like Chewbacca moans. But crazy enough, they lose facial control. So if you see a bear yawning or salivating and you're pretty close to it, that's a sign that they're nervous. They're not tired, they're not hungry, they're nervous because of your presence. Now, if you don't back up and get out of their space, they're going to up their game and they're going to tell you to back up. So, one thing they might do is a bluff charge. And this is where they will take one or two steps in your direction really quickly, and it's going to scare the pants off of you. And that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to scare you away from them. Sometimes they'll do what we call ground swatting, where they'll take a nearby bush or a log or something, and they'll just hit it really hard. And they're more or less saying, if you don't leave, this is what I'm going to do to you. And so these behaviors are really effective at letting us know that the bear's upset and does not want us around. So, how do we react? This is our chance to communicate with them. So, like I said, in this defensive situation, say you encounter a mother with cubs, first thing, don't pose as a threat. They're nervous to begin with. If you're in their personal space, they don't want you there. So don't act all threatening. Slowly back away, talk calmly. Now, if the bear comes at you, shout at it, but shout softly, like, whoa, bear, whoa, whoa, I'm sorry, did not mean, whoa, I'm getting out, I'm backing up. So you're trying to lower the tension between you and that animal. And lastly, and this is where things differ with some things you read. Y'all have heard the nursery rhyme, if it's black, fight back. Please forget that. Your reaction needs to be based on the bear's behavior, not what color it is. So if you're in a situation where you surprise, say, like I said, a mom with cubs, the last thing you want to do is act really aggressive. So if she comes at you immediately, drop down, curl up, cover your neck. She's just trying to eliminate that threat to her cubs. You might get bit, you might get scratched, but hopefully she just takes her cubs and moves on. Now, here's where you do fight back. If she continues that fight, you're going to have to fight back with all you have. Um, but initially, most bears in a defensive situation, they don't want to get into a fight. They just want to eliminate that threat. And so if you are not a threat, hopefully they just move on and go about their business. And so that's how you react. Stay calm, talk softly, back away. Those bears want you out of their space. All right, that was the defensive side of things. Now let's talk about the offensive side of things. There's only two situations pretty much where a bear will act offensively. The first is where they're trying to get a food reward. They smell something on you, whether or not it's in your pack, on your clothes, maybe perfume. They're curious as to, hey, I wonder if this human has something that I could eat. That's the primary offensive maneuver for a bear. The other one is when they truly act predatory. And instead of seeing something in your pack as the food source, they see you as the food source. This is the most dangerous. Fortunately, it's also the least common. This does not happen very much. Both of these situations are not good. You don't want a bear approaching you trying to get food. Now, remember, in an offensive situation, the bear's trying to decrease the distance. They're trying to get close to you. So instead of being all loud and boisterous like the defensive situation, they're in stealth mode. They're going to be quiet. They're going to be sneaky, trying not to make noise, trying to get as close to you as possible without you being aware. So, what is the bear trying to communicate to us in this offensive situation? Simple. He's just saying he's hungry. He's looking for food. And so they may do this stalking posture where they're kind of creeping up on you. Another thing to watch out is constant pursuit. Just because a bear is walking down the path behind you, he could actually just be walking on the path. But if you turn and go in a different direction and that bear turns and follows you, your spidey senses better start tingling. They tend to keep their head low or swaying back and forth, kind of like a predator stays low in that crouch, and their eyes remain locked on you. They don't want to lose this potential food source, so they keep watching you wherever you go. So these are signs that the bears give that tells you what they're doing. And so how do you react in an offensive situation? Completely different than the defensive situation. First off, no, you don't make a will. You can get out of this, I swear. The first thing you do in an offensive situation is you don't pose as a meal. You don't pose as that food source that they're looking for. You make sure it is crystal clear that they are not getting any food from you, whether or not it's in your pec or it's your right thigh. They're not going to get any food from you. And so obviously in this situation, you're going to slowly back away, try to find someplace safe, whether or not it's a cabin, a car, other hikers. You're trying to find a safe place. But in this situation, if the bear continues to come at you, you get aggressive. You shout like you mean it. You become the dominant bear. You let them know that if they come to try to eat something from you, you're going to eat them instead. So this is where you get all banshee, very mean and boisterous, throw things, look big, act really, really tough because this is what you got to be. Now, in this situation, if contact occurs, obviously you're going to fight back. The bear's looking for food from you, and you got to make sure he gets the message you're not going to be an easy meal. So that summarizes the two things. I created this little graphic. It's kind of busy, but it pretty much just summarizes the last 20 slides I had where offensive behavior, the bear's going to be sneaky and quiet, trying to get close to you. You get aggressive, you scare him away. Defensive situation, the bear is nervous. It does not want you around. It has cubs, a food source. You're too close to it. They're popping their jaws, they're huffing at you, they're bluff charge. They want you out of there. Just slowly, calmly back yourself out of there. Both situations, see that thing in the middle? Bear spray. If you have it, it's your second line of defense after your brain. Wonderful, wonderful tool. So forget the nursery rhymes. Base your reaction on the bear's behavior, not on its color. So with that, I'm going to summarize and just let you know, bears are extremely intelligent, wonderful animals. Favorite animal that I have ever worked with. And the cool thing is they try to speak to you. And if they do, the best thing you can do is listen. And so with that, I want to say thank you. I have to give credits to all the people that sent me wonderful photos for this presentation. If you liked what I saw, I did write a book. You can find it on you can just Google spooning a bear and it'll pop up on Amazon. But it's all the stories of when I was working with bears as a young wildlife biologist. I do have a website that is under revision. It's really, really close to being released, a new version of it. I do have lots of podcasts out there with a coworker of mine, but the best way is probably follow me on Facebook at Wildlife for You. So with that, I love doing these talks. Again, my apologies for not being there live and in person today. Wish I could, but I will answer whatever questions you have, provided Brian gets them to me. So with that, I'm going to thank you, and I will let you guys get back to Brian and Kim, but appreciate everyone out there.